City Lights on Location now joins actor Tom Hanks, and the film is Splash. I made a comment to one of the Walt Disney and/or Touchstone Buena Vista executives, and I said,
those guys are.
well, you have, it's so difficult, as you must know, Tom, to get these titles correct in the industry, particularly with the turnover. But I made the comment that one goes into Splash not expecting a lot, and the movie begins, and you think, this is clever, witty, Tom Hanks, Daryl Hannah, John Candy, Eugene Levy, a lot of good work going on here. How are they going to sustain it for an hour and 51 minutes? And at the end of the movie, you have this pleasant, happy surprise that you've seen a good, witty film. You are one of the reasons. And I don't know, why do you think, in your opinion, that one would approach a movie like Splash not expecting as much as one really gets out of it?
Well, I think some of it is just the stigma that is thrown on by those various companies that you never are sure of who it is. In this case, the new Touchstone films. You have an idea that a Disney film will consist of one of two things: people talking to cartoons or people talking to Volkswagens that can, that can climb up the sides of buildings. And in our case, when I first got together with Brian Grazer, the producer, and Ron Howard, the director, they were so very particular about the fine line they wanted to walk with this movie, knowing full well that if you take the idea of the myth of a mermaid and translate it to film, you run the risk of being either too erotic, and then it's no longer a romance, or too quaint, and you're dealing with clamshell, and then you're into It's a Small World or something like that with cute little girls with pearls around their necks and tails on them. And in order to make as hip and as interesting a film as possible, they were always very much aware of that razor's edge between going too far one way or too far the other way. And then also running the risk of just being bland. I mean, it's very possible to make a very bland, dull, plate of potatoes movie out of something like this. And so, in getting together and all the pre-production work that we had, and I think in the casting of John and Eugene, people who, I admire to the point that I had trouble not foaming all over them when I first, oh God, I just love you guys, and how do you do this? And also with Daryl, from the work that she's done on Blade Runner, and I think the casting of me was putting together as best as possible a group of people that understand the collective effort that must take place in getting away from a can you top this kind of thing. Their approach from the very beginning was getting, I think, a very well choreographed script from Lo Gans and Babaloo Mandel, very well put together, very sure about what directions they wanted to take the story, and then filling that up from an collective point of view, making it as interesting and as enjoyable as possible without just adhering to any one strict particular formula. They really had, in some ways, to break a mold when Ron made this movie in order to make it work as good as possible. And I think in some ways they've hit it pretty well. This is not our approach to it was always as a romantic movie, a romantic, enjoyable comedy that is reminiscent of the Fortune Cookie or The Apartment or any number of Jack Lemmon movies. And at the same time, having that storyline, that sense of narrative that like a Preston Sturges was able to put in, or a Howard Hawks, or a John Ford. And that's Ron's influence on the film.
You mentioned two films and called them Jack Lemmon films. You are the actor. I'm the moviegoer, and I would have called them Billy Wilder films.
Well, exactly. See, now Ron Howard would say those are Billy Wilder films. Me, I say they're Jack Lemmon films.
But at the same time, Ron Howard, your director, who has an actor's soul, can talk about you and do a comparative study on the kind of actor or actors Jack Lemmon, Jimmy Stewart are, where you have a guy with a heart of gold and a soul who is funny, but about whom you care. So it really is a circle.
Yeah, and that's very high praise from Ron, I must say. I don't know if I
After the kind of success that Bosom Buddies had with the public, if not on every occasion the cast, in terms of one's pride in what one does while working, and I know I'm sitting in front of an actor whose regional background and experience is Shakespeare and the classics.
Mm-hmm.
But this is your motion picture debut in terms of a feature film, Splash. Surely with Bosom Buddies, there were scripts that came through your agent manager long before Splash.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you do any of them?
Because, in all honesty, they were just too reminiscent of the work that I had done on Bosom Buddies. Variety, to me, is the only thing that can really keep me interested in going. And had I been interested in just, in some ways, capitalizing on the persona that you develop over the course of doing a TV series, I could have been working, you know, right on through without any problems, both in films and certainly in television still. But after spending that much energy and that much frustrations and anxieties over the course of 2 seasons, you just got to do something different. I'm just not intrigued enough to just go back and do the same kind of shticks and do the same kind of funny bits in order to get the same kind of laughs. It doesn't interest me, it doesn't challenge me, and if I was to adhere to that kind of stuff, or just to take whatever came along, I'd be an unhappy human being. I'd rather be challenged and have fun at the same time than just, you know, party my way through a job.
In the middle of all of this, reading about you, preparing to meet you for the first time, which is interesting considering how much time you spent in the city of Toronto.
Yeah, I was all over Toronto for about a month, yeah.
You were filming Rona Jaffe's
Mazes and Monsters, yeah, for CBS.
So you know the city.
Very well.
But I'm bringing that up because I was reading about you, and I smiled at one of the stories because I thought of a parallel of one of the better scenes in Mike Nichols' Silkwood, where Meryl Streep is on the airplane and the stewardess comes to her and puts down the meal, and Karen Silkwood, in her naivete, says to the stewardess, "How much does this cost?"
Mm-hmm.
The point of reference with you is, you were in New York, you were in a studio loft somewhere on the East Side doing a videotape for Bosom Buddies, went on for a while, and one of the ABC executives said to Tom Hanks, "We want you to go to California," and you said, "No way, I can't afford it." And I thought, where has this guy been all this time? Did you really say that?
Yeah, yeah. I said, the call came in from my agents, and I said, "Well, you know, I can't. I got a family. I can't afford the $300." He said, "No. They would all be taken care of for you." So, oh, well, then, okay. Well, then I guess I'll go.
Then you spent 3 months commuting.
Back and forth, yeah. It was a very hectic, crazy, and you're also jumping from the cold, frigid January climate of New York to the passive, you know, perennial summertime of Los Angeles at the same time, weeks back and forth. It was a situation where they were interested in me for a number of projects that ABC had coming up in pilot form. And so I was having quite a few meetings and quite a few auditions and quite a few tests in Los Angeles over what is essentially the pilot season in Los Angeles for January, February, and part of March. And it wasn't until at the very end that I finally met the producers of Bosom Buddies, who said, "We want you to do this." I said, "Great, can I go home now? I'll come back and make this thing." And they did. And out of all the things I tested for, Bosom Buddies was the only thing to make the air.
We have to take a commercial break.
Oh, all right.
All right. City Lights on Location will return with Tom Hanks and a scene from Splash right after this. You're an actor who married an actress.
Mm-hmm.
And as your career grows, and obviously a film like Splash has an effect on it, hopefully good scripts will come to you. What is happening with your wife Samantha and her career as an actress?
Well, she's in a play that we're producing right now in Los Angeles in the Equity Waiver Theater. She has a support role in it. And beyond, she's also took time off to have 2 kids and sort of get them into close enough to school ages so she can get back into it. She is, I have always been used to associating with actors, the company members that I have worked with, and most of the friends we have are other actors ourselves. So you would think that there was a pressure that is put upon 2 people, you know, with the egos that can grate up against one another, but she doesn't read for the roles I'm up for, and I don't read for the roles she's up for, so we don't have any problem with just discussing into business and then getting down and eating the pork chops that either one of us made for dinner that night. Actually, it's probably much more difficult to be married to somebody who works a lot than it is to you know, both be working at the same time on different things. We are a house that the cardinal sin is boredom. And if both of us are bored, that's terrible. If one of us are bored, that's bad. And neither one of us are bored and are out doing and working around and running around like chickens with our heads cut off. That's paradise as far as we're concerned. That's even better.
It's interesting how an actor's career is so often affected by what he's done in the past, and the reality of you showing up on the set of Happy Days to play a character who got thrown out of a swing in childhood by the Fonz and returns years later as a black belt karate expert intent on revenge. What's important about it is that Ron Howard never forgot what you did. You were remembered. Did you, when he called you and you thought that episode of Happy Days might get me the lead in this movie, were you surprised?
Yeah, well, actually, Ron had left the show and was really only no longer involved. But the Happy Days, as a group like this, they stick together and are almost, very much an extended family. And when I finally went down and did an episode after Bosom Buddies had been canceled, the jungle drums, so to speak, of the Gary Marshall organization at that time also included Lowell Gans and Babaloo Mandel, who wrote the script of Splash. And you go down and you spend a week and you have a good time, and they're good people, and you work with Henry Winkler and Tom Bosley and Marion and Jerry Paris, the director, and everybody like that, and you sort of feel as though you're in a very small way have been part of this institution that Happy Days is, had become at the time. You just think, well, I had a little shot, I had a little tiny piece of that, and when I'm 60 years old, I'll be able to say, yeah, I did an episode of that show that's still running on the air today. You have no idea that you may be making some sort of ripple in a pond that is going to carry off farther on down the way. Now, when I finally met Ron, I was meeting a guy who I felt as though I had grown up with in the first place, because Ron's, I watched the Andy Griffith Show when I was a kid, and I'd seen American Graffiti in 1972 and took off on the nostalgia craze. But at the same time, I had also known that I had moved in the same circles that he had moved, and we knew a lot of the common people, but at the same time, had never met face to face. So when it came time I knew his work, he knew my work, and at the same time, both of us could only say, hi. How are you? Nice to meet you. And then we talked about just the script at hand, and so it was really a very clear, we started from absolute scratch, and in a very professional sense. It was really painless. It was an amazing thing. I was expecting. And Ron, of course, can drop any one of any number of names that will put either one of us on the floor. I mean, he could say, yes, Henry Fonda said to me when I was 14, or John Wayne,
Betty Davis,
Lauren Bacall, James Stewart, Glenn Ford. I mean, the list is phenomenal.
That's what happens when you've been working for 25 years and you're 30.
I mean, if you were able to somehow package the education that he has had, both as a technician, Ron Howard has seen everything that could possibly happen on a set happen. I'm sure he's seen fires on a set. I'm sure he's seen somebody drop dead on a set. I'm sure he's seen egos flare up, romances. Nothing has happened on a movie set that Ron Howard has not seen. And you would never know it from this guy who walks into a room and just kind of sits down and says, how you doing?
Is there a conflict in you as the actor who had the experiences you had in regional theater and really knew what it was to count pennies, to pay the rent, being in a position through residuals or success of saying, I can turn down work and it's a sacrilege considering my philosophy of life as an actor?
Mm-hmm. There is. You have it so ingrained for such a long period of time that the only thing that is important is the work itself. And that an actor works probably more when he is unemployed than when he is employed, because he has to, he's got to go out and beat the pavement and make sure that he's got the audition pieces together and whatnot. And there are more times of anxiety caused by not working than the worries about actually performing a role. So in some ways, whenever anything comes down, it's like, geez, this is, let's see, it starts next Saturday and it runs until, is there any way this can work out? This is the thing that immediately goes through the head. But I think the luxury of being relatively successful in whatever career it is your ability to say no to those things which really don't interest you. In some cases, eventually, you want to get away, you know, from doing, perhaps you don't want to do any musicals anymore. Or a job offer comes down, you say, thank you, really, but it's time for me to get out of chorus work. Or a theater that you've worked at a lot wants you back again, you have to say, no, I finally have to get out of this place. To be able to say no with a clear conscience, knowing that they're not going to repossess your car, and the phone bill will still come through, will be paid, and they're not going to disconnect it. To have that worry removed so that you can actually say, you know, this script really doesn't have enough of it. It's too much of a repeat of what I last did, and so I'm really going to have to say no. It is now such a really a wonderful feeling to be able to say that, that it no longer forms the headaches and the hassles and the worries that once are there. It's something that we all aspire to as actors, to be able to say no to work.
But as an actor who first made his mark on the stage in a production of Taming of the Shrew, who now has a degree of financial security and knows that one of the great cliches of the movie business for an actor is you fight for two things in this business: money and billing. Can you afford, artistically and emotionally, if not financially, to go back and do theater, whether it's regional, a Shakespearean festival, or off Broadway? I
think so. My philosophy, and the philosophy of the people that I work with as far as my representation goes, has always been that the work speaks for itself more often than not. And no matter how much hype is involved or how much money is involved, if the work is bad, it's plainly obvious to everybody, and so it's a negative mark, no matter what the billing is, no matter what the money is going to be. And actually, to be able to be out of television, where the schedule is much more free and open, we are able now to put the role itself back at the top of that list. Money, billing, role, 3, 2, 1. And I think that is another example of how the financial situation has granted me yet another luxury so that I can actually pay more attention to the role itself. And that becomes part of the criterion for saying either yes or no. That's a marvelous, very lucky feeling, and let's hope that it lasts for a while and doesn't disappear in the fog.
It always does when you knock on mahogany.
No, I hope so.
Now, did you win your Pan Am wings for service in the air?
You betcha.
And what is that second pin you're wearing,
The second
Tom?
pin means absolutely nothing. I'm just doing my Konstantin Chernenko imitation here. I want to look as Russian as possible with as many medals as I can get on my lapel. There's just something to break up the monotony of I bought this in Toronto, by the way.
Did?
Yes, I did.
I thought it looked
This
snappy.
jacket cost me $10.
Either you or Gordon Lightfoot, we're going to buy it.
That's right, that's right. Just down there on Queen Street. This is where I picked this one up. The buttons came from the States, though.
I've enjoyed meeting you.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. You are a man that does your homework, I must say.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for Splash.
Oh, well, my pleasure.